Apparently, when you make a brand, the brand has to be decided in a very conscious and probably in a far more far-reaching and future-oriented way. I'll be talking about few brands, but that doesn't mean that these are wrong decisions. Many of these brands are million-dollar brands, and probably in terms of history, they are historic in nature. Take for example brands like Sony, take for example brands like Whirlpool, take for example brands like Nescafe. These are fabulous brands, these are historic brands, but can Sony accommodate a refrigerator under its brand? No, because Sony as a brand is very rigid and not flexible. Similarly, Whirlpool cannot accommodate any television under the brand or Whirlpool, because as a brand Whirlpool talks about any kind of fluid, any kinds of water, any kind of liquid related or associated product, and so television or home theater doesn't get accommodated under the brand Whirlpool. Similarly, when Nestle decided to introduce tea, they had to think about a new term, new coinage, Nestea and not Nescafe, because tea cannot be accommodated under the brand umbrella of Nescafe. These are the examples of a brand being rigid in nature and not flexible. This is not the case when it comes to examples like Samsung. This is not the case when it comes to examples like LG. You will find brands like Samsung and LG far more flexible and rather non-rigid, can accommodate a wide range of products which are heterogeneous under the sun, but under the same brand, under the same logo. This is one example when you look into the issues of rigidity and flexibility. Let me now talk about issues of managing a brand in a different way. I spoke about one way where you try to go for an image makeover on a patient manner. I gave examples of rigid brand and a flexible brand. There can be another way of looking into it. The other way of looking into it is that why don't you start offering a new kind of a brand which aims to look into a different kind of a picture. Some of the examples I have already given in my earlier part of the lecture, where I spoke about the Titan introducing Sonata, because that will be diluting the brand Sonata, that will be diluting the brand Titan if you offer low price products under the same umbrella. Similarly, Samsonite offering American Tourister, or for that matter Pantaloon offering Big Bazaar. These are the examples which probably take me to the second level of the example. For example, Toyota, or for example Nokia. These are the two brands which had hidden aspirations of tapping the upper end of the market for quite some time. Toyota, which in America, for the American citizens, have long been considered to be a very good, efficient vehicle, low operating cost, easy on your pocket, and probably very good technology. When it comes to taking the car to an office, for an American, probably they don't look beyond a Toyota. But when it comes to a social outing, when it comes to taking your car for a night out, when it comes to taking your car for a social gathering, probably the demonstration and issues of status come into the picture, and that is when probably a normal American doesn't think about a Toyota, thinks about BMW, thinks about Audi, thinks about Mercedes, thinks about Porsche, thinks about Rolls-Royce, thinks about Bentley. Now, how does Toyota fit into that particular league? Toyota had hidden ambitions of probably offering products at the high end of the market, but under the umbrella Toyota, you cannot fit in that particular problem. This is the same reason why Maruti in India has never been successful with the high-end cars under its stable, because Maruti always in Indian market with the Indian consumers has been considered as a car for a middle income group of, or upper middle income group of consumers. So Maruti Kijashi in the top end of the segment has never been a successful car for the same reason, because of that particular reason. So whenever an Indian consumer thought about looking beyond a car price around in the range of 14 lakhs or 15 lakhs, they probably thought about Honda, they probably thought about Nissan, they probably thought about Volkswagen. So let me take my example back to the American scenario where I was speaking about Toyota and what Toyota did. Toyota did offer a high-end product, but not under the brand Toyota. Toyota came up with a brand name called Lexus and offered Lexus to the top end of the consumers. And Lexus, they very consciously made it a point not to sell through a normal Toyota outlet, because that would have diluted the brand. The same story is true when it comes to Nokia offering a high-end mobile phone in the marketplace. Nokia offers Vertu. Vertu is a top-of-the-league mobile phone that comes at a price bracket of 1 lakh rupees plus, but Vertu doesn't get sold to through any of the outlets which are called Nokia priority dealers. Vertu gets sold in jewelry shop, Vertu gets sold in Vertu boutique, were to get sold through another kind of premium channel partners, where probably, as I told you in my first part of the lecture, that were to in its category probably fights or competes with another budget products in that particular category. So probably Vertu doesn't fight with any other mobile phone, Vertu fights with jewelry and such other demonstration product. So these are examples which takes us to the conclusion that when you talk about a brand should necessarily think about how to manage itself, whether it is a rigid or whether it is a flexible brand, who are the consumer the brand cater to, and not only that particular parameter, the marketer should also think about have a long-term vision regarding that brand. Think about what are the kind of products in future probably the marketer will be accommodating within the purview of that brand, and whether the brand is flexible enough to accommodate those future brands within its domain. Having said that, these are the issues that a normal student have to take into account when he thinks about managing a brand, when he thinks about image makeover of a brand, and when he thinks about the rigidity and the flexibility of a brand. Let me also take you into the world of marketing of service. Service per se is a very interesting concept. The main reason why service is interesting is that service is unlike any other tangible product which has a physical existence, shape, size and ownership concept. Service by its very nature comes with some of its inherent limitations, drawbacks, which probably at the same time happens to be its characteristics. When you look into a service, normally we say that service is heterogeneous, service is inseparable, service is intangible, service is perishable and service cannot be owned. What it says is that when you talk about intangibility of a service, service doesn't have any physical shape or size, unlike a product which is tangible. For example, your journey by a bus, for example, getting treated in the hospital bed, for example, your experience of staying in a hotel, for example, traveling by metro, for example, listening to the lecture of a teacher in a class. These are all range of services which doesn't have any physical shape, size, only experience and fond memories remain. When you talk about inseparability or when you talk about heterogeneity, it boils down to the fact that the service provider needs to be physically present in order to provide the service. Unless otherwise the service cannot be dispensed. What I am trying to say is that the teacher has to be personally present in order to deliver the lecture, the doctor has to be personally present in order to treat the patient, and the driver has to be personally there to drive the car. As a result, there is an issue of inseparability. Similarly, no two driver, no two cook or no two teacher, no two doctors or physicians treats or rather offer the service in the same manner. Their prescriptions differ, their modality of teaching differ, their manner of driving differs and their recipe tastes different. So service is heterogeneous. One another very important aspect of service is that service is perishable. What I am trying to say is that service needs to be consumed as and when it is an offer. A service, unlike a tangible product, cannot be stored, cannot be carried over. Like say for example, a watch doesn't get sold through a showroom one day, probably there is a possibility of selling it the next day. But empty dining chairs in a restaurant or empty seats in a aircraft in a particular route, or probably missing a lecture or empty hospital bed, you do not add hospital bed next day to recover the loss of revenue on the previous day. That is not possible. So service is perishable and service cannot be owned. You do not own the service provider, you do not own the cinema hall where you pay money and see or watch a film. You do not own the hospital where you get treated, you do not own the hotel where you stay, you do not probably own the university from where you get the degree or earn the degree. So when you look at service, service suffers from these problems as well as they can be referred to as its characteristics. Well, can marketer do anything to change this scenario? Can marketer do anything to manage this service in a far more efficient manner? Yes, they can make the service look more tangible, they can make the service look more separable, more homogeneous, and they can also make the service less perishable or probably give some kind of a feeling of ownership by some kind of strategies that they can adopt. Remember, at some point of time one need to understand that these characteristics or these drawbacks can never be wiped out, because if they are wiped out, they no longer remain a service. So as a part or a natural process of being a service, these characteristics remain. All that the marketer can do is adopt some kind of measures so that probably the effect of these or the impact of these drawbacks can be minimized or arrested to some extent. Now what can the marketer do to make service look more tangible? Well, add those tangible gifts, like staying in a hotel attracts those shampoo bottles, those soap and various kinds of tangible memories that you carry back, or probably staying in the hospital, getting treated in the hospital, those x-ray films or those reports, those plastic carry bags, or probably when you avail the banking services or credit card services, the bank or the credit card time to time surprise you with some small gift. That can be a watch, that can be a wallet, or rather booking a holiday from a travel agent. Probably the travel agent might surprise you with a duffel bag or a travel bag, which is the tangible reminder of the intangible service that you have availed. Let me talk about inseparability and heterogeneity. Today when I speak on inseparability and heterogeneity, there are some advantages as well as some disadvantages. Probably 30 or 40 years back, when somebody was dealing with inseparability and heterogeneity, there were issues where probably you never looked beyond human being providing a service. But today when you look into the issue of service, there can be two categories of service. One where mechanization has replaced the human component of the service delivery system, and the second type of service where mechanization has not been able to replace the human element associated with the service. Now the category where mechanization has been able to replace the human element in the delivery system of the service today is separable and homogeneous. Take for example the vending machines, take for example the ATM counters, take for example various kind of mechanized service delivery system, where probably the ATM machine will be very much homogeneous in nature with all the clients, the experience will be same across all ATM machines. Or probably today when you collect money from the ATM and do all the kind of banking services without any human interface with the bank clerk, without any human interface with any other kind of people in between, probably today service has become far more separable and far more homogeneous. What happens with that category of service where probably the mechanization has not been able to replace the human component of the service? What happens over here is that in this kind of a scenario, that the policy decisions, the training and also extensive use of database management system can effectively reduce the diversity, can effectively reduce the heterogeneity. What I am trying to say, imagine you encounter certain challenges in life. What kind of a challenge? That you do not like the doctor in the hospital who is in the morning shift. You rather prefer a doctor in the hospital who is in the afternoon shift. Can you guarantee that you will fall sick in the afternoon only? What happens if you fall sick in the morning? You wait till the afternoon shift doctor comes. So what I am trying to ask you, or what I am trying to teach you, is that how can the hospital authority make both the type of doctors in both the shift equally acceptable to all the clients, all the patients and all the customers across the board? So for that matter you need policy decisions, for that matter you need extensive training program, for that matter you need extensive use of database management system. Take for example Singapore Airlines uses database management system very extensively in this kind of categories. Singapore Airlines knows very well who is flying with them on that particular day in that particular flight, so the air hostess doesn't forget to refer to that particular passenger by name. The air hostess also has the information, the cabin crew also has the information about whether somebody is flying on that day in that particular flight, and whether he or she is having birthday, he or she is having anniversaries, or he or she is having a special day that day, for which probably they do not forget to surprise that passenger with some kind of gift. Another challenge in front of us is to understand that sometimes you will find the corporate executives would like to check into the same room in the same hotel every time they fly into that particular city, and they also prefer to be serviced by the same room service boy. What happens if that room service boy falls sick? What happens if that room service boy is on leave? So obviously the corporate executive is not going to check out, he is going to stay in that hotel. The challenge is how to retain that executive and make him stay in that hotel in spite of the fact that his favorite room service boy is absent. That is not at all a problem today. You can make use of DBMS, that is the database management system. You can probably store all kinds of data, the likes and dislikes, his morning newspaper, his breakfast, his dinner, his evening tea, all kinds of likes and dislikes into that particular system, and probably as soon as Mr. X checks in, whoever is in the room service of that particular room can log into the laptop or log into the computer system and find out the likes and dislikes of Mr. X and treat him accordingly. So today you have to be very careful in issues where human beings have not been replaced by mechanization, where mechanization has not been able to replace human being. To a large extent, extensive use of policy decisions, training programs and database management system can reduce the problem associated with separability and the problem associated with heterogeneity and make the service far more separable and far more homogeneous. Let me talk about perishability now. When you talk about perishability, it is a simple rule of economics. Better management of demand and supply that can handle the perishable status. As I told you that service is always perishable, meaning that service needs to be consumed as and when the service is on offer and it cannot be stored or carried over. So what do? You probably manage the demand and supply in a much better way. Simple example, like say for example where the air traffic demand is low, the airlines fly less number of flights in that particular route. Probably where the air traffic demand is very high, for example Calcutta Delhi, Calcutta Bombay, Calcutta Hyderabad, various airlines have more number of daily flights every day, all days of the week. But when you talk about connecting northeast, Lilapur, Lilabari, Dimapur, Aizawl, or for that matter Raipur and such other places where the air traffic demand is low, probably thrice a week, 4 times a week, small aircraft, not a wide body jet, various kinds of manipulations are done so that you do not run a show where you have empty seats lying in your aircraft. Another brilliant example is that if you are thinking about the metro railway in Calcutta, the metro railway runs at a different kind of frequency at different period of time throughout the day. Early in the morning probably the frequency is 15 minutes and gradually as the days progress the frequency comes down to 5 minutes or 6 minutes for every train. That means that during the peak hour when the demand is very high, you put in more number of rakes, you put in more number of trains. When the demand again comes down, probably you withdraw those rakes and probably run the metro at a larger interval. That is one way of dealing with perishability. When you talk about ownership, ownership is probably the only issue on which probably the marketer do not have any control, and so service remain a problem in terms of ownership and service cannot be owned. Having given you this picture of the problems associated with service and the measures that marketer adopt, how to manage them, let me take you into the world of service marketing mix. As we all know, a normal marketing mix comprises of 4 P: product, price, place and promotion. A service marketing mix comprises of 7 P. Service marketing mix, apart from the normal 4 P, that is product, price, place and promotion, comprises of 3 additional P. What are these 3 additional P? These 3 additional P's are people, process and physical evidence.